Good evening and welcome to the first co-produced program courtesy of Abner Television Channel 36 and Radio VKV Aotearoa. In this first episode, we will take you to an academia symposium held at Henderson's Unitang campus earlier today. We hope you will enjoy the content of discussion and of course gather relevant information about Fiji, ranging of course from sports, tradition, culture, socio-economic and politics. We will take you now to Henderson's Unitang campus.
Sembarangan yung tegubunan na prosong na sing ni kuwa au no makabinanga be kemni ke sana do men sing ni kuwa pamimbi be to testigo tuba e kemni na ngone mai bakayawa na tonda ku pio kalani.
धन्यवाद पहले हम सबके शक और बात करते हैं सबके वेलकम करते हैं
Nah, ni nimberan na tegubu au na bino kata mana bartak nga na ke bakayan don na kaya na yado na kanimatay na bunan ni bakademu na ano to balay ito nga sanan dua
अब थोड़ा हिंदी में थोड़ा कड़ा पड़ता तो हम सवेरे हम कॉल करें आप इंडिया के प्राइम मिनिस्टर तो हमसे थोड़ा पूछा कौन सी है टॉयलेट हिंदी में सब चीज़ ना तब सब जो लिया इधर और आपके से बाहर निकले तो फायर एग्जिट उधर है
sama mata takin dua pa ya yan tadi emergency fire exit tumba assembly point nga ay matani lag sa dua na
और तीसरा है धूम्रपान निषेध नो स्मोकिंग
na doon bituro gyud ka tugay edake na pro edake so nagikire nga men tonga nan tuwa sa sirangoy na
और आज हम सेलिब्रेट करते हैं आज से 50 साल हो चुका है 1970 हमारे फीजी पे
okay binabalik again.
Now, thank you so much for being here, and welcome to everybody. Thanks so much, Linda and Singer and the team. They've done a lot of work in putting this together. As Linda said, the very first Fiji, let's say, researchers meeting was in Canterbury in 2017, when Teresia was still alive. Unfortunately, 3 of our Fijian scholars passed away within the span of about 2 years. It was Teresia, Dr. Durutalo, and Dr. Ma in in Australia. All bright young women who had a great future, and for some reason, they all passed away. And Patrick, who's now listening from Otago now, told me that, Steve, you're probably next. And I told him, no, it's you first. Yeah. Now, thanks so much for being here, because one of the purposes of having this was really to do with how we, as Fijian scholars, can connect with each other. Because I've been here since 2009, when I realized that we are such a minority. Although in the Pacific, in the Pacific Ocean over there, Fiji, we pride ourselves as being the most advanced and probably the most educated, and we basically dominate the islands in terms of various things. But when we come to New Zealand, we are a small minority because most of us, we either go to Britain for education and other purposes, or to Australia, not so much to here. But it's growing all the time. And one of the reasons why we thought it might be a good idea, because particularly in research and academia, it's a very highly competitive, very highly racialized, some of you probably don't realize, and full of hurdles here and there, political hurdles, academic hurdles, bureaucratic hurdles, and a lot of our young scholars trying to come through, they just disappear down the wayside. And a lot of the Pacific scholars generally, not just Fijian, but Pacific scholars generally. And one of the reasons is because the structure of the education system here. In fact, I gave a seminar. Some of you may have listened to that on Zoom for Massey University. I talk about the subject of my next book, which is called some fancy Kandavu name, Epistemic Siege, the globalized neoliberalism and the commodification of knowledge and power. What it means is that in the knowledge world, whether it's in the school system, whether it's in academia, gone were the days when knowledge was seen as the way in which society can improve and how we human beings can develop because of the power of what is known as the neoliberal culture, which has transformed that, where it has to do with money. So it's not so much human values, it's money. But a lot of pushback. A lot of universities around the world, a lot of countries are pushing back. And in terms of promotion, in terms of publication, and the ranking of journals and the ranking of universities are based on some of the metrics which they come up with. And now they realize that all of these metrics are flawed in terms, and I was trying to point out yesterday how flawed they were. And a lot of academics were saying, oh my gosh, is it true? Yes, indeed, it's true. Particularly the ranking of journals. Some of you are probably pushed by your universities or institutions to publish in particular journals. So there's a whole lot of, if you like, mafia operations behind the scene, which people don't realize. It's just beginning to come out. So that's why it's important for us as Fijian researchers to begin to engage with each other, to link up, because we really don't know who's where and what are people doing. And when I say research, I don't only talk about academics doing research, whether students doing their PhDs or masters, or those who are teaching or in fellowship positions in universities. Research also happens and takes place within communities. Researchers, everybody's a researcher in their own right. And the moment you sit down at the bus stop and watch people go past and say, oh my gosh, what a beautiful dress, you're doing a research in some ways. You're beginning to formulate a particular worldview about beauty, for instance, how people dress up, or people's behavior. And it's all locked up in your thinking, and it's not allowed to come out unless you talk around the Yangona bowl and then Tanoa and start saying, hey, what about this and that? So a lot of the knowledge within our communities generate themselves within the Tanoa bowl and within what they call the gossip. It's not so much gossip. Gossip is a very negative connotation, when in fact it has to do with just sharing some concerns about something. Now, so the idea is, so when we started in 2017, only 5 of us at Canterbury. I know 1 or 2 of you were here. Apo was there, and Patrick is still alive. He's still there somewhere. Tarisi has gone to Hawaii, University of Hawaii. So we thought that, my gosh, then who's there? Who's left? So we decided to cast our net wide to make sure that we catch as much as possible, as much fish as possible, to put it that way. And so thank you so much, Unitech, for helping putting out the advertisement. Singer has been very busy trying to do that. And it's amazing to know that through this process, a lot of us who met many, many years ago, many moons ago, are meeting each other again. And a lot of us have just heard about each other, are meeting. And that's very, very good. Now, there are a number of things which I think will come out of this research symposium. One is to begin to engage and connect and network amongst ourselves as Fijian researchers, not just academic researchers, also community researchers, whether you are in business, whether you're in civil society, whether you're in any community organization, because there's so many issues which confront us, whether it's to do with health, whether it's to do with education, whether it's to do with crime, whether it's to do with employment, whether it's to do with inequality, whether it's to do with racism, whether it's to do with biases of all sorts, whether it's to do with particular forms of cultural heritage that we want to preserve, whether it's to do with multiculturalism and so forth, that probably needs research. As you realize, New Zealand is quite proficient and comprehensive in terms of its the relationship between research and policy, research and strategy and planning in the community. I do a lot of work for MFAT, Ministry of Foreign Affairs on the Pacific. So almost every little thing they do has to be driven by research and evidence. I suppose we can't say the same thing about our country over there. Everything is driven by one or two people making decisions. And research is the last thing in the mind. So that's why it's important for us to maybe, despite our political differences, despite our ideological positions, despite our different racial, cultural positions, Fiji is still there for us. And how can some of the evidence of research, whether it's to do with crime, there's so much crime in Fiji, nobody's doing any research on that. There's so much inequality, nobody's doing research on that. There's so much a lot of things happening, particularly after COVID-19. Nobody's doing research on that here. The universities in Fiji, you have USP, University of Fiji, and National University of Fiji. A lot of them are focusing more on teaching rather than research. And in fact, USP, which I know better, research has been put at the back burner. I've been there for a long time, and then I left a long time ago. So that's why it's important for Fijians all around the world to be able to generate the kind of knowledge which may be useful in terms of the future of our country and our next generation. So that's why we count on you, we count on you, and count on all of us to share knowledge, share ideas and skills and the capacity to be able to generate the kinds of knowledge which will be useful for the community. Now, 2 more minutes. I was given 15 minutes. I've taken up 16 minutes already. Now, and of course, we are here because the idea was to have this, was it around May or July? Because of COVID, we had to shift it. So it's just coincidence. When we shifted it to October, then it's Fiji Day. Then, oh, that's great. One of the reasons why the hosts are wearing this nice blue shirts and dresses. And they gave me one, and I said, it's too precious to wear now. I'll wait until the best occasion, which will be tonight. I'm also invited to something tonight in Canterbury. I'll wear that. And I will say that it's from Unitec. They sew beautiful dresses and shirts around here. Now, of course, 50 years is a long time. It's also a short time. A long time in terms of, I mean, I remember I was, what was it? No, I don't want to tell you my age. I was in the village, a village school, Yali District School in Kandavu, when the 1970 Fiji Day happened, when the flag was coming down, the British flag was coming down, and the Fiji flag was going up. And I noticed that there were these seagulls flying around, making noises. I wasn't sure what they were saying. And then 50 years later, then I realized, okay, maybe they were trying to warn us. They were behind the horizon because they were flying so high, so we couldn't see what they could see. They could see into the future, the horizon, and beyond the horizon, we couldn't. We were just doing things on the ground. And suddenly, they were warning about the challenges that Fiji had gone through and warning about some of the great things as well. When we look back, although we've had coups, at the same time, we've had the building up of resilience in our people, despite whoever was in power. It's almost like, I remember as a young student at USP, I used to go down for Saturday drink at the Metropole, and Chona is laughing. He probably saw me, probably saw him around that time. And towards the evening, the drunkards will be fighting. This guy will go down and stand up again, another one go down and stand up again, and about 6, 7 times, and eventually the police will come. And I think in some ways we've been like that. We build up the resilience to go down and stand up again, go down and stand up again, and go down and stand up again. For 50 years we've been doing it. And I think in doing that, some people say it's destroyed our communities, when in fact, at the same time, we can actually transform a lot of those negativities into positivities. And we can use some of those moments of going down into resilience, into building up the strength and consolidate ourselves for the future. And of course, the future of our children. And that's where the research community that we're trying to build here can help in that direction. Because we value education. Our kids have been telling us, you go to school so that you can become smart. And now that you are all smart, so what do you give back to the community? We all do so in different ways, whether it's to do with sending money. In fact, $400 million worth of remittance generated annually in Fiji. A lot of it is from you, from my pocket. Although some politicians are saying those people overseas should not vote. But the problem is that we sustain the economy. Without the 400 million, the Fiji economy will probably in the best shape. So we are just as much part of Fiji as anyone else. So the fact that you're away actually strengthens your position rather than weakens it. So with a research network, we hope to bring in some value, although we all know each other in terms of our names, in terms of where we come from, whether it's from Lambasa or from Lautoka. In fact, we'll do the introductions later. That's why I have to finish very, very quickly. We'll go around the room and then tell us who you are, which part of Fiji you come from, whether that part of Fiji is still there or not, taken away by climate change or whatever. And then, so it's a matter of making those connections, a matter of building up from there. And then we hope that the 50 years will be of value. So the idea is to add value to what I mentioned yesterday. Was it the other day? I was on Zoom with the students and staff from Vic. They invited me. They had a couple of hours session on the language. And one of the things I told them was the need to protect the Fiji brand. Now, the Fiji brand does not belong to the Fiji government or Fiji First or Fiji Water or Fiji Rugby Union or Fiji whatever. It belongs to all of us. It has to do with how you identify and your consciousness about your country and about each other. It's to do with the people. And every time, and I told them the other day, every time you fail your exam, every time you do badly, you're giving that Fiji brand a bad name. You're giving it a bad look. But every time when you pass, when you get your degree, when you do well, then you're giving the Fiji brand a good name. I've traveled around the Pacific, I travel around the world quite a lot, and I meet a lot of Fijians. They're all over the place. In Britain, of course, in America. I was in America for a few months in 2018. I met a lot of them. A lot of them are doing very badly. A lot of them are doing very well. The same thing in here. And I mentioned to them the same thing. When I was in the Solomon Islands, I noticed that quite a lot of them are in very high positions. And they're telling me how they have been able to project the Fiji brand to the extent that they don't want to let go of them. And even the Australians are saying, you guys are better than us. So last but not least, in the last few seconds which I have, I see a singer moving around and basically trying to tell me, can you please shut up? Yeah. In our own particular ways, and the 50 years anniversary is a good way of injecting some positivity, some contribution to that Fiji brand, whatever you're doing, whether it's in business, whether it's in education, whether it's in rugby, they've done a lot in terms of that, whether you're in whatever position or status within society, the Fiji brand is still yours, it's ours. Now, sorry, I need some water after this. So with those words, I would like to say thank you very much again. Thank the hosts for such a wonderful gathering. And of course, I'm looking forward to the Lovo. I've never had Lovo. I know Chon is the director of the Lovo, operation. So looking forward to the roast pork and all those. And also in the final hour, we are going to have, after presentations and lunch in the Lovo, if you don't go to sleep, we'll have just a general discussion about the future in terms of who is going to host next. There are a lot of people, a lot of universities or institutions here who already have put their hand up, and we'll see whose hand is longer. Yeah. So with those words, Vinakabaka Lebu, and have a nice day. Thank you.
Professor Steve Ratu already mentioned. And I remember it's only a Talanoa session, so I'm not here to present my whole thing. That's what my supervisor from Lincoln told me. Yeah, go ahead, but don't say everything. Just mention it's a preliminary. It's just what I'm being approved to do for my research. Yeah. Basically, I'm used to teach at the University of the South Pacific with Steve Ratuva and Mr. Gaundra. And they left earlier. I think they've seen the vision of those birds that flew in 1970. They came first, so I just follow their footprints. Anyway, my passion for, I'm a land management student from USP. I did my bachelor there and I went to South Australia, Adelaide, to do my master's in land economics. And then I came back in Lincoln to do my PhD. And my passion for land is basically on land economics. I wanted to become a land surveyor, but unfortunately, the coup in 1987 forbidden me to come over to University of Technology in Auckland. So I'm an impact of the coup culture in Fiji. So, but anyway, God has purpose for us, and I thank Him for everything. And instead of doing land survey, I did land economics, land resource economics. Yeah. So my passion is on valuation for environment. I see that I've been part of consultancy in the region while at uni, and I've seen there's a great need, a lack of understanding in the areas of non-market valuation. From the University of the South Pacific, there's none or non-market valuation methods. We only know about valuation of properties, of land, real estate. There is none whatsoever on land resource economic, which is the non-market valuation to assess the damage done on the environment. So for our Talanoa session is basically what is been there in the Constitution of Fiji, 1970, before 1970, and now under the 2013 Constitution. Yeah. So they're still following the 1974 Cabinet decision policy on how to compensate loss of cultural fishing grounds. For Fijian, as most of us understand, my fellow Indo-Fijians, the importance of the cultural fishing grounds, the customary fishing grounds, golingoli, as we call it in Fijian. So those are the area of interest, the very areas that needs to be compensated when developments are taking place, especially the foreshore reclamation area. That's the boundary of high water mark, as you probably know, high water mark and the low water mark, and the laws of the seas, the international laws of the seas. So legally, all the ground fishing in Fiji are owned by the government, but the customary fishing grounds area, the Ngolingoli, are basically managed by the traditional or the indigenous Fijian land owning units, especially those on the coastal side. So my friends from Naitasiri, they probably don't have any customary access to customary fishing ground, but because of the traditional link, probably the people of Verata or Tailevo or Rewa, they may have access to those areas because of our traditional linkage. So that is the importance of customary fishing grounds. And it goes back to before the first, our colonizer came in 1874, even before that. Right? So it was already exist how the Fijian managed their customary fishing ground. So an important area because now most of the developments are taking place in Fiji, especially on the coastal area for tourism industry in the western part of Viti Levu and also Vanua Levu. So my case studies areas are basically on the Malolo Island, and probably we have had so much of the case been coming up, development are taking place, developments are taking place, especially our Chinese investors from China doing without the actual consultation with the landowners. So that is a big problem. And right now, under the compensation policy under the Fiji government, we only have used the 1974 policy. It is still being exist, it's still being used by the current government, which is a one-time compensation, just of the one-time compensation in terms of the fishing catch. So that's how, if the development is coming place to take place in an area, your fishing ground, to compensate the landowner is basically a one-time catch. That's it. That's done. So there is a disadvantage. They don't take into account all the existing cultural values, the seasonal type of seasonal fishing stocks. You know, fish do change differently during the years, how they give birth to their young ones. So those are the things that are not being taken into account when assessing compensation. So my area I'm really passionate about is how to compensate this so that the landowners or the ground, the customary fishing ground owners are compensated justly. So my area is valuation. I'm a registered valuer in Fiji. I'm also a part of a registered valuer in Australia because I graduated from there from my master's. And this is an area that I really passionate about, valuation of customary, the destruction of fishing grounds and not being assessed just and fairly to the landowners. So my methods, which are part of this, are very important part in the research that I'm going to do. And my supervisor from Lincoln, they are very well qualified in the areas of non-market valuation, and they're really helping. But I think it's one of the most interested areas is looking at what are the customary or the cultural values that needs to be taken into account when assessing destruction of customary fishing grounds. I think I've spoken for more than 3 minutes. Any question? Remember, just a Talanoa session. It's not so. Then my supervisor told me to just say what you're doing, and that's all. Don't mention anything more. But as I said, the lockdown period is one thing that I'm praying for, that God will allow me to go to Fiji because my case studies areas are in the Malolo. Those are my case studies areas. And I'm really fortunate to the NLTB. It already gave me the green light to go ahead and do it. And I told them it's all for academic purpose. Nothing to against the government or whatever. It's all for academic purpose. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, hello everyone, and thank you to the organizing committees for giving this platform that we can come and share our knowledge and skills that we've all learned, especially from humble beginnings back home in Fiji, and then see where we are now. And it's been a pleasure and honor to be here to present something that I've learned.
Just signal me and I'll change the screens as you want.
Sure, will do. Yes, last year I just completed my master's in architecture. So, and to complete that, I had to do a research project, and so I took the opportunity to go back to my background, back home in Levuka, and I said, okay, I can do, let's see if the knowledge and skills that I've learned all this long, if I can give back to the community back home. And so my main project was focused towards designing something architecturally that would benefit everyone in the community. I initially wanted to do it to aim for tourism. I thought, oh, tourism could bring some money into Levuka. But then it kind of worked out with other lecturers and having discussions with the lecturers. It came out that tourism was going to be like, they was told that tourists would just come to a town and they'll just want to know the place within 5 minutes and then they move on again. So I said, whoa, I'd rather change my course, so just make it benefit for the people back home. So the limitation to my project was to Levuka. I thought I can start off with just exploring things in Levuka before, and then use the platform which I can use to do other places in Fiji. So I took the chance to look into the town. So basically, we were aiming to do a cultural center, community and cultural center. And so to begin with, I looked into the history of how buildings had been built in Fiji, begin from the traditional Itauke Mbures, and then how history evolved through the town, through the coming of the early Europeans. And with them, they brought their own architecture, and they set up the town by making buildings that they could remind them of their hometown or home country where they came from. So if we could just go back one more slide back. So here we can clearly see that in the early years, when the town was established, the other image in black and white, we can clearly see there that there's a river. This is the northern end of the town, and this is Levuka Bakawichi at the bottom. You can see all the structures, which is the Itauke building structures, and then beyond the creek is the town. At that time, it was a modern town of Levuka. So we can see modern materials were introduced at that time. So a clear contrast of the different types of technology being used from the Itauke moments and then the new introduction of European materials and modern materials started coming in. And then the other colorful image is the modern era, where we can see a transition of the modern materials because of the technology and materials available, and because of the weather and cyclones that we encounter, things have been strengthened. But doesn't mean to say that the earlier designs of bures weren't strong. They were definitely strong. They stood the cyclones as well. And the structures were solid and really deep into the earth. And then only thing that needed changing was the thatchings. So really commend the architecture at the beginning stages. So if you can just have the next slide. So we can see so just explore the whole town. We can see that there was mostly lots of first things happened there, and especially with the arrivals from the Itaukei, then the early explorers, they came into town, and then they set up the town, being the first town. They set up the administration, and then all the structures that we can see. So most of it we can see is basically this. We see the ocean coming up. Then there's a seawall, then a bit of green, then the road, which is a straight road, beach street, and then we have the buildings all in a linear line, which is facing towards the ocean. So basically, you'll be walking through the town, and you'll always be you have the buildings just on one side of you when you're walking through the town. And so I looked into it, and most of the for the introduced materials and stuff, we can see there's lots of parapets brought in and verandas to give shelter as you walk along. So I looked into, looking through the traditional bore structures and built up, and also exploring what was brought in. So I used that to inform me for coming up to design a community center. And most interestingly was to build something that people would need, which is required. So in Levuka, I noticed that during the tropical cyclone, Winston, it really damaged quite a lot of public facilities, like the gym, and where youths and people could go and train and exercise. And very promisingly to see that the youths of Levuka were doing very well and performing at high levels of sports arena, especially for the ladies going into weightlifting and and making our country proud. So I thought, that's one thing that's definitely a need that will keep the youths busy and occupied. So that was some of the things. So I was exploring, okay, what else? The next one was a library. I thought, we should invest in libraries. We all have come and we've gone to libraries to get knowledge. And I said, that's another powerful stance that will be really useful for our community back home in Levuka. Can we see the next slide? So I was looking at some, so the decision to look for a site came along, and then I chose a spot which was quite central at the entry of the Levuka town. We got Pafco at the bottom end. We got the wharf where all the boats would come in to the island, and then just where the site on the top of it is the starting of the town. I said, what a nice junction here. It's quite central. It's got the town beginning on the top end. We got the Pafco at the bottom end, where employs about 90% of the people on the island. So I said, that's a nice place where families can come, parents are working, they can also, children can go to school, and later they can come back and just wait by the library. And so from there, then I developed a program. Yes, next one. So just looked into this and thought some of the programs that came in mind was the library, a multi-purpose hall, somewhere to provide a facility for functions and activities where people could do art and craft to share and teach each other continuously. For the library to educate people, and also have places where you can put artifacts and a bit of a place to display old artifacts and stuff to give knowledge and understanding of what Fiji has gone through. And also for a main exhibition, and a gym at the far end is in yellow. Most importantly for this project was a space. So the main focus point was this Rara. And as we can see, that Rara plays a very important place for all of us. We need a space that we can congregate first, come and say hello to each other before we go into a building and stuff. Or even if you go to a building, you do whatever you do, but then coming back out to this common area where everybody can feel open and free. So with that, I tried to incorporate doing this project to be able to create a space that it could be informal at most times, but also a venue that we could host something formal. So the placement of the area of the Rara would play a very important role just to gather everybody in that space. This next one. And so I had to look for some drivers to inform the design. I looked into the Ndrua, and the first point I pulled out was the shelter on the Ndrua, which was the house and shelter they provided as they travel across the sailings. Mostly, I would say that we ladies being in the sheltered area, taking shelters, or high prominent profile people. So I thought, okay, that's one point I can take out. The next was the ocean, the waves, giving some shapes there. Then I looked at the Yavu, where our mbures are placed on, to provide a platform of high level. And another was the approach into a village kind of thing. So there's a Rara always in the middle, and then the arrangements of buildings are the sides. And not forgetting, as we in Fiji, we all multicultural and ethnic. So I thought we need to give recognition to everyone so that everyone can be part of this thing, because we all are living together and want to make a better place and a better community. Next one. And so this was the outcome of the project that I came out with. As you can see, there's a green space Rara in the middle. I placed the library on the right-hand side, just where we can gain knowledge and have places of display for artifacts. And there was a kindergarten at the back. On the right-hand side here, it's the main hall, which is open to all activities and functions that the community would want to use it for. And at the back was the location of the gym. And next slide, please. So these were some of the interior images, just to show how spacious the rooms were. The top one here is the exhibition, acting as a place like we normally see here, where like an information center, just to get some knowledge and directions of what's going on around town. The other one is the outside view of the gym with some green space on the outside, and that's this one here at the bottom is the interior view of the gym, and then the main hall space, just to show some volume. So the shape of, if you can go back one more, please. Yeah, one more. Just getting back one more time. So as you can see, the form of the roof on the two buildings on the sides was depicted from the waves that I pulled out as a driver. The central building, which is the exhibition, that was the design taken out from the house on the Ndrua. So, and then the green space was just to allow the approach to the facility, which was like entering into a village setting. Thank you. And then we'll just, yeah, the next one. And then this is just a video of that was presented. So this is the approach from the wharf coming in, and then you can see the whole complex set out in front of you. And so the green space, and wanted to make this building more interesting and relate back to the town as well. So we got this post veranda sort of relationship relating back to the town itself. So this is the signage board. So this is the library here, giving a bit of open space, double height, another like a first floor level, make it open and airy. And at the back there was to be the kindergarten. And then just having corridors as well, just to separate the building to allow the air to flow through. And so this was the getting into the exhibition main building, which would have some offices and information center. And as we can see, there's a looking out into the open Rara space, which gives a platform where on the outside you can have it's a stage. It becomes a stage during formal moments. And so just tracking through, and then coming up towards the gym area. The gym has elevated a bit because of the landscape, and just to give a bit more height and ventilation space, and a bit of green space on the outside, just to give a bit more relaxing space, just to have a talano as well, like we do here, after gym workout and discussing techniques and stuff to improve. And then just coming down again into approaching towards the main hall space to carry out community activities, collectively getting everybody together, organizing and probing by sessions. And so nice and open and airy, and also that everyone can always look out into the Rara space and out to the roadside. So there's always connection. So just an overall view again of the whole complex. And and then just gonna drive, walking back into, as you get into the town center where all the shops and stuff are.
That was the show for tonight. We hope you have thoroughly enjoyed the content of that Academia Symposium held at Henderson's Unitec campus. Do not forget to watch the second episode tomorrow night at 9:30 once again on Apna Television, Channel 36.